in the dense ridges of northern Appalachia, where the fog hangs heavy and the sunlight rarely penetrates, lies a place the locals refuse to name. Whispers call it Bishop Hollow, and if you've grown up in the surrounding valleys, the name comes with a warning: don't go near it. The Bishop family has been spoken of for over a century, though few can recall the exact details. Some claim they were farmers. Others say hunters, but everyone agrees on one terrifying fact. The Bishops are not like any other family in the mountains. The earliest accounts date back to the 1870s, when travelers reported strange happenings along the ridge roads. Horse-drawn carriages disappeared without trace, and the trails were littered with objects that didn't belong: pieces of cloths torn in irregular shapes, small bones, and sometimes the remnants of a meal left unnervingly arranged on flat stones. Locals began avoiding the hollow entirely, but the Bishop family thrived in isolation, and their influence grew in ways no outsider could witness. What set the Bishops apart wasn't only their seclusion, it was their obsession with preserving their lineage and twisting it into something unrecognizable. The children of the hollow were said to be born with grotesque deformities: elongated fingers, eyes unusually close together, and smiles that seemed too wide for human faces. Travelers reported seeing them from a distance, crouched along the ridgelines watching silently. Their movements were almost inhuman, gliding through the underbrush with a predator's precision. The first concrete evidence of their practices came in 1898, when a prospector named William Hargrove disappeared near the hollow. A search party found his abandoned campsite, but the ground around it was strange: footprints that were too small, too long, and strangely angled. In the surrounding brush, hunters found animal carcasses that had been gnawed clean, as though by teeth that were not entirely human. It was a sign, the locals said, that the Bishops were feeding again. Over the decades, more reports surfaced. A preacher who stumbled into their cabin described rooms lined with jars filled with preserved organs, walls etched with strange symbols, and the faint smell of smoke mixed with decay. He also claimed he saw a figure in the loft: an emaciated child with pale skin, crouched unnaturally, watching him with eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light. The preacher fled, but he never stopped telling the story. "They don't bury, they're dead," he warned. "They use them." By the early 20th century, Bishop Hollow had become a place feared even by other isolated mountain families. Hunters claimed to hear laughter echoing through the trees at night, voices imitating those of loved ones. Travelers reported that the path seemed to shift, leading them in circles, always closer to the hollow itself. And when someone vanished, sometimes only a single item would remain: a shoe, a scarf, or a scrap of clothing, carefully placed atop a tree stump. The Bishop's cannibalistic practices weren't done for survival alone. Locals whispered that they believed consuming human flesh strengthened them and passed on traits from one generation to the next. Those who survived the encounter often described something else entirely: rituals performed in the shadows of the hollow, where figures danced around fires, chanting in a language no one could understand. Masks made of stitch together faces were worn, and strange symbols were painted on both flesh and wood. Even in modern times, the legend endures. Hikers tell of shadows moving against the fog, fleeting glimpses of pale figures on the ridge, or the sound of footsteps that never match their own. One couple in the 1980s claimed their car stalled at the edge of the hollow, and they saw a line of figures slowly emerging from the trees, emaciated, almost skeletal, carrying crude tools. They fled without looking back, and yet the Bishop family continues. Though no census lists them, and the government declares the hollow uninhabited, locals swear they still hear whispers at night, and see lights flickering deep in the woods. Some say the figures have changed over time, growing taller, faster, stronger. Their hunger is no longer just for food, it is for power, for blood, for continuation of a legacy steeped in horror. The question that haunts the mountains is simple: what became of the Bishops, And will anyone who strays into the hollow ever return? By the 1950s. Bishop Hollow had become more than a place of rumor, was a warning etched into Appalachian life. Hunters who entered the outskirts of the hollow often returned pale and shaken, their eyes haunted by shapes moving just beyond vision. One account describes a group of teenagers camping near the hollow. At first, they laughed and told ghost stories, but by midnight, that laughter had faded into silence. They heard footsteps circling their tent light, deliberate, almost rhythmic, then whispers. At first, soft, almost polite, as if calling them by name. Then, layered and discordant, overlapping voices, each imitating the teens' own tones. When they peeked outside, nothing was there, only the fog, shifting unnaturally, hiding movements that seemed faster than the eye could follow. By dawn, their supplies were gone, ripped clean from the tent, leaving only faint drag marks disappearing into the woods. By the 1970s, the hollow itself seemed to change. Trees twisted in impossible directions, roots clawing the air like skeletal hands. Hunters reported seeing crude totems made of sticks and animal skulls, tied together with sinew. Closer examination revealed marks of gnawing both human and animal land. Small symbols carved into bones, evidence of rituals. Locals whispered that these were warnings, signs of the family's presence, and reminders of the hunger that lingered. In 1978, a young couple traveling through the mountains vanished. Their car was abandoned near the trailhead, doors open, belongings scattered. Only a torn sleeve was found snagged on a tree, drenched in blood. Weeks of searching uncovered shallow pits filled with bones, some too small, some gnawed clean. Nothing else remained. Residents nearby swore that shadows watched their homes that night, and the low laughter of children carried on the wind, even though no children lived there. By the 1980s, the legend grew even darker. The inbreeding of the Bishop line, combined with centuries of ritual and cannibalism, produced a family that no longer resembled humans. Eyes too close together, limbs unnaturally long, skin pale and stretched over prominent bones. Those who reported seeing them described movements like predatory animals, climbing trees, leaping over clearings silently. One hiker swore he saw a figure wearing a mask made from stitched-together flesh, crouched on a ridge, smiling as it watched him. In the 1990s, a group of amateur documentary filmmakers ventured into the hollow. They carried cameras and audio recorders, hoping to capture proof. The footage that returned was almost unusable, blurred, shaky, static, but one scene stood out. A figure, impossibly thin, crouched near a fire pit, chewing something that glistened in the flames. Its head tilted unnaturally, eyes reflecting the camera lens with an inhuman glow. One of the crew whispered, "There, eating." The camera cut to black, and the crew was never seen again. By the early 2000s, reports shifted from legend to reality. Hikers and hunters claimed to see lights flickering deep in the hollow, even during the day. Shapes moved between trees, pale, emaciated, following silently. Some claimed voices imitated family members, calling them by name, luring them deeper into the woods. A few locals left offering small animals, coins, even food, believing that the Bishop family's hunger wasn't just for flesh, but for attention, for control, for legacy. The most recent account, from 2018, tells of a solo hunter who found a series of miniature altars hidden in the underbrush. Each contained gnawed bones, animal skulls, and faintly burnt symbols. As he investigated, he felt eyes on him, though nothing appeared in sight. That night, he awoke to scratching on his tent and faint whispers repeating his own words. When he fled at dawn, he found claw marks carved deep into the trees surrounding the campsite. By now, the Bishop family was no longer just a story from the past. Locals warned that their descendants, mutated over generations by inbreeding, ritual, and cannibalistic practices, still roamed the hollow. and if you stray too far into the fog, some say you might hear them calling your name, waiting, watching, hungry. The question remained, could anyone survive an encounter with the bishops, or was anyone who entered the hollow doomed to join the family's grotesque legacy? And if you think that's terrifying, just wait until you see what comes next, because the Bishop family's darkest secrets are far from fully uncovered. By the 2010s, Bishop Hollow had become almost mythical, a place people feared even to speak about. Yet, despite its reputation, curious souls continued to venture inside, drawn by the promise of evidence, thrill, or notoriety. But the few who returned painted the same chilling picture. The family had evolved into something far beyond human. One account tells of a photographer in 2014, drawn to the hollow after hearing stories from locals. He claimed to see figures crouched along the ridges, pale and elongated, moving with unnatural grace. Their eyes reflected the moonlight, wide and yellow, and their mouths curled into smiles far too wide to be human. In the trees above, he saw smaller figures, children, though distorted, emaciated, with faces that flickered between human and something else entirely. The photographer stumbled into a clearing and froze. There, around a fire pit, a grotesque ritual was underway. Figures danced around the flames, chanting in a guttural rhythmic tone. They wore masks stitched together from human skin, decorated with black symbols etched into flesh. At the center of the circle was a pile of bones, some small, some large, arranged with eerie precision. From the pile, something moved, a body, or part of one, gnawed clean, twisted unnaturally by generations of inbreeding and ritual. Suddenly, the photographer realized he was not alone. Shadows approached silently from the trees, taller than men, limbs bending at unnatural angles. They reached for him, and he ran blindly through the hollow, tripping over roots and debris. When he finally escaped, he looked back to see shapes, standing along the ridge, watching him, their eyes glowing in the mist. Over the next decade, reports continued. Hikers vanished without a trace. Campers heard whispers calling their names, laughter echoing in the fog. Some returned, days later, disoriented and bloody, claiming only to have been chased by pale figures that disappeared whenever they turned to face them. Investigators found remnants of makeshift altars, bones, teeth, small bundles of hair, and ash-stained symbols carved into the bark. No one was ever caught, and no one could confirm how many members of the Bishop family remained. The cannibalistic rituals weren't simply acts of hunger, they were rites of power. Locals whispered that consuming human flesh was believed to pass on traits from one generation to the next: strength, cunning, and the uncanny ability to stalk silently through the forest. And in every account, one detail remained consistent. The Bishop family had learned to vanish at will, slipping between trees and fog, appearing only to strike fear and hunger. Even today, the hollow hums with the memory of their presence. Hunters report feeling watched, hearing low guttural laughter, and glimpsing forms that vanish before they can react. Some say the Bishop family is patient, biding their time, watching those who wander too close. Others believe the family has spread beyond the hollow, mutating in secret, waiting for the next trespass. The true horror is simple. The Bishops never died. Their legacy persists in the mountains, etched into every shadow, every twisted tree, and every whisper of the wind. Anyone who strays too far risks becoming part of the family's macabre history. And if you think this story is mere legend, remember this Bishop Hollow still exists. The forest still watches. And some families never let you leave. If this tale of the Bishop family left you unsettled, that's exactly the point. The horrors of Appalachia are far from over. Subscribe, hit the bell, and comment below, which cursed family should we uncover next? But beware, some doors, once opened, can never be closed, and some mountains never forget.